Hello and welcome to the next episode or the next lesson of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Reusch, educator in Los Angeles, and I have on today a fellow educator in Malin Gutestam, coming all the way from Sweden. I'm really excited to talk to her because I just read her book that's going to be available a week after we're recording this, so in early October. Called Brain Tools for Teens. And as someone who's had on a lot of people who are in the psychology and sociology, social psychology, neuroscience kind of realm, I love all of the like self-development stuff. I have Carol Dweck's mindset on my wall behind me. To translate that for teenagers is so important, and the book is amazing, and I'm really thrilled to have her here. So Malin, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit, now you go into it a little bit in the book, but can you tell us a little bit about what drove you to want to go down this road? This book took you like 4 years to write or something like that. It's a lot of research and it's a lot of science. What made you say, okay, this is a book that's needed? I'm guessing that I haven't written a book yet anyway. And I think part of it is like looking left, looking right. There's nothing here like this, so I'm going to do it myself. Was it something along those lines?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I had been teaching, in Sweden, we call it upper secondary school, which would be like senior high school, for a few years. And I've been teaching physical education, learning to learn strategies, health projects. So I was really into, the health of teens and giving them strategies to learn. And then I was invited to actually start doing workshops for teachers about the connection between physical activity and learning and the brain. And that was in 2005. It's a long time ago. And one workshop led to like 100. People were so interested. And I felt like I had read everything I could find of the popular science books and translated that. But I felt like I needed to really get into the science myself and understand it from the source instead of just trusting what other people said. So I started looking out to see what kind of education I could find, something in university. But the only thing I could find was like in medicine. And that was not really what I was after, but it took 3 or 4 years. And then I found something called, it was a postgraduate degree at the university in London, outside London, called the Neuroscience of Leadership. And I thought, well, this is at least something that's more interesting for me. And when I started studying, I realized that it was together with people, CEOs of different companies, leaders, managers, coaches from all over the world. It was amazing, but I was the only one focusing on the future generation of leaders.
Yeah.
Because that was my aim, really, to what in here can I translate to my students? So that was my big aha moment after a couple of weeks, really, when I had started seeing my students, my colleagues with new eyes, because they were very stressed. It was difficult to focus, and this is almost like 9-10 years ago. So now we talk about the smartphone generation, but this was previous. So what I felt like, I want to use this information for leaders and translate it to my students, because they shouldn't have to wait until they're like 40 or 50 to go a course to learn more about their brains that they needed in high school.
Yeah.
So I actually I did my 2 years, which was very intense. And after that, I got the opportunity from my school, which really, they like, new development. So I was able to create a course for teens in brain health and learning strategies. And I was also allowed to actually do it as a pilot study. So I had 2 groups, I had control groups, tested them before and after to see. And it's interesting, you mentioned the mindset with Carol Dweck, because her study from 2007 was really the one that inspired me to do my study. Because what they looked at was like, if you teach teenagers study skills and you teach one group brain plasticity, will that affect them differently? And it definitely did. Because if you understand more about brain plasticity, you understand that your brain can change. And then also, if you put in effort, you can change your surroundings and what's happening to you. So I thought, well, what if I teach teens brain health and learning strategies and see if that affects their perceived stress and mental well-being?
That was your Young Brains course.
That's my Young Brains course.
Yeah.
So that's what I did that. And it was a significant difference between those that participated in the course. The interesting thing as an educator to do this in a school system is that I had to ask from my from the headmaster and the teachers and parents. None of them could know what I was doing with the teens and who was attending, because then they could go in and kind of, do something that destroys the results. But already after a couple of weeks, the school nurse, parents, people started talking and coming back to me and saying that they could see differences in the teens that actually participated. So after a year, since I couldn't do a randomized study of ethical reasons in a school, I was able to do this for 3 years with new groups and add everything together. And it still showed the same results. Those that participated, their stress levels were reduced and their mental being increased, and the opposite in the control groups.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
So are you familiar with John Rady? John Ratty wrote Spark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been talking to him about getting him on the podcast, and I actually had him booked, and then something happened where he got off, because it's a similar idea of the connection of physical exercise and how that leads to better brain function. And you go into that in the book as well. I think that just having been around teenagers myself for a long time, 15 years or so, they're experiencing now highest levels of anxiety and depression and stress and all that kind of stuff. I think helping them to understand why and how that works is just so important, because they, like the idea of, well, you're stressed because you have too much homework. That's too myopic. That's not really what it's all about. There's a lot of reasons why. And we're not looking at how is this actually affecting our brain. So to help them know, it's kind of like what you do when you just know neurochemistry, or even when you do like meditation. It's like, oh, this feeling, I know what this feeling is. It's this part of my brain doing that. It just makes it so normal. And for teenagers who never feel normal and all feel weird and all feel like this is a feeling that no one else has, to normalize all of that through credible science is, I think, really beneficial. I really do. I think just for their just overall sense of awareness in the world and their mental health.
Well, I think there's so many things that comes into this, but I mean, I've been teaching the age group of 16 to 19-year-olds, and what happens, there's so many things going on in their brains, but they look like adults, and we tend to treat them as adults. We ask of them the same responsibilities, and we look at them and we say, come on, just do it. But if they know that they're actually in a phase where their brain is developing and that their brains react differently in some situations than adults' brains does, then it's easier for them to understand, and also for the parents, because this makes it's so much conflict around them. And I think if that's really why I wrote the book for teens, because I think that we have to work on different levels with this. We have to work with the teens, we have to give information to the parents, and we have to work with this in education. And another point is that I call it brain health, because I want to reduce the stigma of talking about, because we talk of mental ill health. When we say mental health, people think about illness.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you talk about brain health, it's quite normal for anyone to think that, okay, yeah, my body needs to be healthy, my brain needs to be healthy. And you can step out of that stigma and start looking at the things you can actually control. And one of my biggest insights from this is that if we teach teens, because I've been teaching health, and not all students pick up on health.
Yeah.
But when I started teaching brain health, they realize that this actually affects my thinking and my learning. And then to do physical activity because it's good for my brain is great. I had one student say that if I had known that in 6 months I would go out running, and you told me that half a year ago, I would be lying on my couch laughing at you. I would never do that. But now I realize that it's good for my brain and for my thinking and then comes the insights of the overall health. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
such a good starting point. And when you talk about this, the step over to learning is so close. I mean, you talk about sleep and how you consolidate memory. So you can talk about memory. So how do you remember things? And how should you prepare for stuff? Well, it's good to sleep. And then you're on your way into studying techniques, just, before you know it.
For sure. Yeah. The element of like how the teenage brain is different and they should know that is really important because, and I fall into this too, is they're stressed about stuff. And I say like, guys, it'll be fine. You'll be fine. Go talk to your grandpa about, the fact that you got a B+ on this and you're stressed out about that and see what he thinks or see what she thinks. And I think that's missing a really important element. Yes, that's true. That when you were older, you look back and you go, oh, I shouldn't have stressed over that kind of stuff. But when you're in it, their brain is seeing things differently. The chemicals that are being released are different and things are really, more heightened and stressed and hormonal and all of that kind of stuff that it's too simplistic to say, you shouldn't be anxious. And what's the worst thing to tell someone who's anxious? Don't be anxious. Like, oh, that's it. Oh, okay, good. I'm cured. Thanks, doc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is really the thing. I think that I've been able to reach them is when you talk health, you talk about you need to be more active. You need to start exercising. But there are so many little steps that you have to take to be able to get there. And it's the same here. We talk to them and we say, don't stress. But if you know about the teenage brain and how easily overwhelmed they can get because of their inner developmental phase, we have to understand that it's hard for them to plan for the future. No wonder they're stressed. And also for us, we can't understand what they're going through in what society looks like today. I mean, one thing I don't think parents or educators really understand is when they have homework, they have to keep track on different digital platforms. They can have homework here, they can have subject websites there, they have different groups that they work together with in different chat forums. And all the time they have to track the information, sort through the information, choose the right one and prioritize. And then everything turns upside down because suddenly it's not the test now. And so
Yeah.
they spend so much of their mental energy on information that they are really tired once they're supposed to start doing things, and that creates stress. That's one thing. And the second thing I think is that, which was a big aha moment for my students, is that they can create their own stress by the way they're behaving. And when they know that, they can make a choice. I mean, it's as easy as talking about multitasking.
Yeah.
But when they understand that shifting between different things, mental activities, actually creates internal stress, and the alternative is single tasking. That's their mantra.
Yeah.
So, but then they can choose and they know, okay, I'm in here, I'm doing this. Oh, maybe it wasn't so good. I'm getting stressed, and they have a choice. But if they don't know, how can they make things better for themselves?
Yeah. So I guess that's the biggest thing that I was thinking about reading this and now discussing it is how much of it. You said that you had students who said, "Oh, if I knew that it would help my brain, then I would have gone out running." I don't. I think that one of the biggest challenges is this. The research that you've done and this book is so good. I mean, it would reduce anxiety, depression, suicide. It would raise grades. It would get a more educated populace. Like, it just would hit all of these things. So the question is, why aren't we doing it? And I believe, and this is maybe more of an American thing, maybe this goes even to like when we were talking before we started recording about COVID and how Sweden was dealing with it and America, is American teenagers lack a lot of discipline. I think Americans in general lack a lot of discipline. I love Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL guy. His whole thing is discipline equals freedom. That if you have the discipline to start those baby steps, even just the baby steps, that you'll start to see positive momentum, and then you go. You just have to start by getting up a little earlier, or start by doing 10 jumping jacks, or going for a short walk around the block. But getting that wheel going, starting that snowball effect, is, I think, the hardest part. It's not that this isn't great. This would be great. This would be great to exponentially grow across the world for our teenagers. It would be good on all levels. It's how do we get them? How do we get them to start this process? Do you know, does that make sense?
Yes,
That's my worry. That's my I think the bottleneck.
Well, I think there are two things I use when I talk to teens. The first one I tell them about is, being a teacher of physical education, it's easy to make comparisons to being in sports or something. But I usually tell them about martial arts. And when you practice martial arts, you can get different colored belts, and you pass a test at the end of a semester. So you practice during the semester or term, and then you do the practical test. And either you get the new belt or you don't get the new belt. And they're with me on that. And then I tell them about 3 people, and they all go through the training, and they all fail, and they all react in different ways. So you have the first one, and they say, oh, martial arts, it's not for me. I have to change. I have to do some other sport. And then you have the second one, and it says, oh, I haven't done enough practice. I need to practice much more before, after school, go do other things. And then you have the third one. It's like, did I practice the right things for the test? And then we talk about strategies. So that's one of the things. And then I compare it, because I usually do it around the time when they have their first math test. So they're new in the school and they're so excited. And then I said, okay, so let's have 3 people that, fail on the math test. One says, this program is not for me. One says, I need to practice morning, evenings, weekends. And the third one says, maybe I need to change my strategies. So then we can start talking about, that there are tools and things you can do, and that whatever you do in a test is a result of what you did before coming up to that test. And the second I talk to them about is habits and how habits are created. And I actually make a graph, and I show them that if you change one little thing every 8 weeks, so like the first thing is you bring a fruit every afternoon, because you get really tired in the afternoon in the lessons. So every day you bring a fruit, and then they laugh. And I say, well, it's not so easy. First, you have to think about what fruits you like. Then you might have to have someone buy them. Then you have to remember to put them in your bag. And then you actually have to remember to eat them. It takes some time to get a practice. But if you do, your blood sugar levels are going to be more even for the rest of your life if you keep doing it automatically. So the next one could be having like a water bottle in your locker and drink a few times a day. And if you look at that for a period of 2 years, that's 12 habits that you'll add to your life. And when they look at the 12, and we can see together that they can actually change their lifestyle and increase their energy during the day. Yeah. And when they see that, because I think when we talk about change a habit, they think like, oh, it didn't work, so it's never going to work. It doesn't make a difference. But you have to show them in the context what this can lead to. So there are certain things I need we have to add to when we talk to teens. And then we have to help them reflect.
Right. And as teachers call it, it's like scaffolding. Like you have to start small. You're not going to build a skyscraper right away. You can't say, hey, change all these things, because there's a lot of stuff that's covered. It's hydration and health and physical activity and sleep and taking breaks and all of that kind of stuff, chunking things out. And all of that takes discipline. It takes discipline to turn off your phone at night. It takes discipline to for all of it. So you have to start small. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I talk about like David Goggins, who's another like crazy Navy SEAL guy that I love. And like, he talks about it started off by eating less milkshakes. Like that's it. He was like an obese guy and then became a Navy SEAL, like ultra marathon runner. And he just said, it started off by just giving up the milkshakes. You have to start small. And I think we as educators or as parents out there, just to kind of hold their hand a little bit and, you know, encourage them, and just, you know, and, you know, the positive reinforcement of, you know, you went 2 days without milkshakes. Hey, you got up and walked around the block for 2 days. Like, you got this, you got this, you can do this. You know, I think that all of that, just, we need to focus on that and less on the standardized tests and what are the results and what are the results. We're trying to rush everything. The kids feel that. They feel about, you know, the pressures of, you don't get these perfect scores and you're not going to get into, you know, these colleges or whatever that kind of stuff is. And we're not focused on the health of the child and thinking long term about what kind of adult is this person going to be. That's what we're doing. And if you set all of these things up early, they're going to be a healthier, happier, more balanced, more centered adult who's going to go out and do great things in the world.
That's really how I set up my course and the pilot study. I had half an hour a week with students. I had short information, short interactions between, you know, they talk to each other, which helped to normalize what's going on. I gave them a couple of alternatives of tools they could use. And in the end, they had to choose one that they were going to try for the next time. And then we started, and we had no books, nothing for the whole time. The only thing we did was actually working with recall. Because I think if you want to change habits, then you have to work with recall for memories, so that they remember why it's good for them, and they have to make a choice what tools they would like to try, discuss why it doesn't work, and do that in short periods of time, and just keep dripping it and working on it. So it's not like a full day. What I did actually for these weeks, I think for 13 weeks, I could have done in a day. It wouldn't have made any difference at all to them.
Right.
So coming back, having short amounts of time and reflection. And you don't always have to write down things. You can let students talk to each other, because it's normalizing for them to see that, wow, this person has problems going to sleep at night. I don't have that. I have this issue, but it gets more normal. We need to talk about those things. And I think we need, and that's really, I wrote the book. I saw that if you have this in your house as a parent together with your teen, it can be there, and you can take it out, and you can, oh, now it's a problem here, let's read a chapter, and you both read it, and you have an objective source. Then you can team up, and the parent or the educator together with them can also say that I'm in this with you, because this is a problem for us adults too. It's not like it's only teens. We have problems with our phones, and we have problems going to sleep at night, and we have all these issues. And I think talking to teens about that, we also have problems, and we can help each other, that kind of strengthens a bond instead of nagging. We have to do this together.
Yeah, the fact that it's in book form, I think, is something, and also having taught, you know, very different communities in California and in Pennsylvania, is a lot of families don't read. A lot of teenagers won't read. They want to look for a YouTube video or an app or something like that. But the fact that, you know, I think the way that this book could be read, where it just cover to cover, but it really could just be read like, hey, I'm really struggling. My child's struggling with sleep, or with, you know, one specific thing is you have a chapter, you have a whole bunch of different chapters, you know, 10 or 12 chapters. Each one is on a specific issue. So you can just go through and just kind of like, hey, let's focus on this. Just like you said, just like focus on this one, or just like, you know, go through and you have it laid out in a way where it's very clear, like with colors and everything like that, where it's very clear. You have summaries about just like little things that kind of get you hooked and get you like just starting the process. So even the way the book is laid out, when people, especially teenagers, hear about a book, a lot of teenagers are like, I'm not going to read a book, like a paper, like a thing on paper with like pages. Like, I'm not doing that. It's use it like a reference, like, just like you said. And I think if just having it or gifting it to a teenager and just keeping it around, at some point they're going to crack it open, and it grabs you pretty quickly, which is something I think is really beneficial about the way it was designed for teenagers, is it grabs you pretty quickly to say like, all right, here's how you're feeling. And then what I believe kids will do is they'll start reading it and they'll go, wow, she is explaining how I'm feeling way better than I ever could. And so like, that's like a really important thing in, you know, everything like sales and all kinds of stuff, is like, if you can identify how they're feeling better than they even can, then you might have some good solutions for them. And that, I think, is an important part of it that you do well.
Well, I think well, it's all the experience. And I also have three, I mean, my kids are adults now, and they grew up as teens during the time I have been working with teens. I've been around them so much, and I've also seen them struggling with the small steps. But I can see that if you help them with the first couple of steps, then they can usually take off on their own, and do things. But as I say in the book, there's going to be times, sometimes life goes on, it feels good, and then suddenly you start feeling stressed, and then you can go back and say, okay, let's check the 7 chapters and see which areas that I need help with right now. Oh, I forgot exercise, or I'm working too hard, I need some breaks, things like that. So to be able to use it whenever you need it. I had actually a school physician, and she came to me and she said, I have 2 boys, one 15 and one 16. My 15-year-old, he read it from cover to cover. He's so excited. My 16-year-old, he doesn't like to read books. He read 1 chapter, and that was enough for him, because that was the thing he felt like he needed help.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really what I hope for, that it can be helped. And I also hope that this is something that's going to become larger in education, that we realize that the well-being of the students, we can't stress them so much that they can't, I mean, it backlashes. And what is going to happen with all the chronically stressed teenagers later on in life? Nobody really knows how their brains are reacting to this.
It's bad. And having taught in, like really bad neighborhoods and very wealthy neighborhoods, it's, the stress is different. It's on different things, but it's going up, and it's a real problem. And if we don't, like you said, if we don't get a hold of this, we got to do something differently. And what we tend to be leaning into is not this kind of mental health stuff. It's not this kind of stuff about awareness of how your brain works. What we're leaning into is more, how do we quantify success? How do we quantify success? What are the test scores? All kinds of stuff like that. The Scandinavian countries have for a long time been the model of how to do school. So I'm sure you're more familiar with it than I am. Can you share with my audience, like, what are some of the differences that you're aware of how Sweden, Finland is always in the conversation, like countries like that do education compared to the way that America does education? Because I know how America does it. I've had on, 3 of the last National Teachers of the Year, who are like the pinnacle of teaching, and they've all spoken out against standardized tests and our focus on that. But what are some of the things that you think Scandinavian countries are doing well that we should be paying attention to? Because some of my audience are not educators and they don't know about what that whole thing is about Scandinavian education.
Well, I think I would really begin a little bit earlier, how our society is set up to support parents and children. I actually wrote down some bullet points to share with you in case we got there. But I mean, in Sweden, it's free state subsidized childbirth in hospitals, so it's fully tax funded. Mm-hmm. Parental leave for 480 days paid. And 90 days are exclusive for the mother or the father. And if they don't take those days, they can't get them. So today, I think it's more, almost 30% at least, are the dads that take parental leave, right, which makes the gender equality when it comes to parenting a good foundation for that. It's fully tax funded with schooling from the age of 6 all through university.
Can I ask you, I'm sorry to cut you off on that, but like, I'm really curious because I think that that's something that everyone should get behind. But my question would be, like, as a small business owner, if you have a small shop and one of your employees has a baby, do the taxes, how does that work? You don't have to pay their salary, right? They just go and then they get the same salary. How does that work? I don't know if this is like in your wheelhouse, but I think that's the biggest question. Yeah.
Well, it's the same funds the same way as when you stay home with sick children, and you're allowed to do that up until they're 12. So it's compensated through the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. So when you have a baby, when you're sick, and all this is tax funded, we have very high taxes in Sweden.
Right,
so
right.
This is one of the things that is funded through this. So
For the
So, and
business owner though, how does that, they just lose that employee for a little bit? Do they have to like keep that spot open? If they work a cash register, do they just have to keep that spot open, hire someone temporarily? Is that the way that it
yeah,
works?
yes, yes,
Yeah. And
it
there's
does.
an availability of temps that can come in and fill that hole.
Yeah, well, you have to look out for that.
Yeah.
I mean, make it work. That's
Okay.
how our system is set up. So,
Yeah, I think we can,
make
like I'm saying in America, like this isn't something that other people aren't doing. For people that are like, well, we can't do that for these reasons, blah, blah, blah. Like we can, we just have to think our way through it. You know, that's just something that I just wanted to bring up because I think that, yeah, having parents in the house that can be there and nurture and all that kind of stuff is what you want to bring up is like, it's not just the schools, it's how society is structured and the schools are a part of that. Is that right?
mm,
Okay. I'm sorry
that's
to
what I
cut
mean.
you off. You can, yeah.
No, no. That's really, I think we have to talk about that too, and not only the school system, because the school system is a result of how our
Yeah, yeah.
society is developed. But we do have national tests too, for our students. And I know that by 2022, I think it's going to be all digital. At least that's the plan. So we do have those kind of tests too. And our system, the school system in Finland is a bit different because they haven't had many changes in the school system for the past 20 years. It's been very stable, which has given teachers time. They have time built in the afternoons for teachers to actually do their planning and everything that's going on. So it's a bit different there. We've had quite a few changes in our system too. So it's different. We also, if we compare with Finland, we have quite a lot of independent schools too. They're all funded by the state, but we have a different system when it comes to that.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think that I'm biased because I'm a teacher, but there is nothing more important than the education of our children. It solves all the problems. Like or at least gets us on the pathway to solve all the problems. So COVID is a problem. Civil unrest is a problem. Let's get really good civics education. Let's get really good scientists in there to work on vaccines and all that. Like all of this can be fixed with good education, and yet we're not focused on it. And it's a real problem because as a teacher we get a lot of like lip service of like, oh, teachers are heroes and all that kind of stuff, but that's about where it ends. Like it's not when it comes into policy, it's not when it comes into a lot of different things. Are we focusing on schools? We have an election coming up, I'm sure you're aware, and it's talking about a lot of things, but very little is talked about education. I don't know if it's going to come up in any of the debates about what is your plan to improve schooling. And it's quite frustrating. And to have you as someone who knows about this stuff, like how do we get this to catch? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it, that if we give children and teens the tools to take care of their own health and their brain health and their well-being, and their stress levels, if we give them the tools to manage that they at a higher rate will complete their higher education if they choose to go that path. But also, I mean, they are going to become politicians, they're going to become parents, they're going to
Yes.
take care of sports teams and whatever in other professions. So what we do and what we provide for them is what they're going to use. And so that's really what we have to look at. We often look so short term and think, yeah, we have to take care of them until they finish high school, then they're university, then
Yeah.
they're grown-ups.
Yeah.
But this is the whole system, and these are the citizens that are going to make up the society. Yeah. And internationally, I hear many educators now talking about that we have to look at well-being. Education can't come at the cost of the individual well-being of a person, and that's really where we're at now.
I think I'm such a practical kind of logical thinker. I think what it comes down to is us, whoever's listening to this podcast, whoever, you know, picks up this book, or, you know, I'm sure you'll do a lot of, you know, media for this book, as I hope you do. I think it's on us. I think it's on us individual teachers to start implementing this stuff, and on individual parents to start giving to your kids. And then what will happen, I'm confident in this. I know you're confident in this, that the results will show. And I know the results showed for your Young Brains class. So what will happen is these kids will start to kill it. If a charter school starts to implement this as like a class and in the curriculum, that charter school will start to do really well. And they'll go, wow, you're producing a lot of really great students. My kid was really stressed and now they're not. They tell their friends about it. And then we get the snowball effect. So maybe it's on us. Maybe it's on you, Malin, maybe it's on you, on me, on Will, and it's on whoever's listening to say, like, I'm going to start these steps in my classroom and with my own kids. And then other people will see the results. The results will speak for themselves, and then it will start to catch. And that's kind of like the idea. It's like proof of concept. I think we just have to start small, and basically take it upon on ourselves to do this. I don't know. Yeah. What else
Yeah.
can we do?
Yeah. I know in Sweden, where the book has been out for a while, I have all people coming back. I had parents telling that they had a son with ADD, and they bought a book for the school nurse, and they bought a book for the son, and they read the chapter and discussed, and they could use that when they worked together to have something to begin with. I have parents that had, you know, taken it into their classes, and yeah, so it really has happened a lot, spreading by
I have
mouth.
no doubt. I have no doubt.
Mm.
I think that we just, if we're waiting for, you know, Los Angeles Unified School District to adopt this, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they're kind of set in their ways, and they're kind of big and bloated and all this kind of stuff, that it has to be on the individuals to start doing this at home with their kids. And, you know, even if your school won't do it, your kid will start doing it, and then your kid will feel a little bit better. And that's not a small thing either. If you could just do this for your own children, that's a great place to start.
Mm. And adults too. I mean, many
Yeah.
of them actually use the tips too, because it's the same for us. We also need to look at these things, because brain health for grown-ups, if we look at insomnia, if we look at stress, if we look at everything that's happening, so I think it's so important. But that's, as I said, I created it as an ebook too, so teens can read it on their computer. But what I really wanted to do was to reach them, because I don't think it's fair. The other way to do it is to write it for teachers, and then wait for teachers to take it on and bring it into class. And I think teens today, it's not fair on them. We have to give them the tools if we can. So whatever way I can get it out.
Give them some ownership. Yeah, teens want ownership over it. They want to be in control of their own lives. They want to be in the driver's seat, not the passenger seat of their own lives. And the more that we can give them the ability to know how to drive, sticking with that metaphor, just the better. Better. I think it's great, and I'm gonna promote it as much as I can. And this is how we get through a lot of problems, and just even on an individual level. You know, I don't have teenagers yet. My kids are little; they're 3 and 6 now. But it's coming, and these are things that we already have a bunch of mindset posters all over the things and stuff like that, and we try to balance a lot of this stuff. So a lot of this stuff was a reminder for me, like, okay, my wife and I are doing some of this stuff right, but it was the science was a good reminder. I've learned, you know, some neuroscience and stuff like that, not as much as, you know, I'm no expert, but it was a good reminder of, like, okay, yeah, this is good. We need to do this more. We've kind of slipped up on this. So even if you feel like you're familiar with a lot of that self-improvement kind of stuff, it's a great reminder, and it's in their language. I say that teachers are translators all the time. You know, we translate information, complex information, in a way that they can understand. And this book does that. It takes neuroscience, what's more complex than that, and puts it in a way that they understand.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So where can people, you know, I know that you have a website, the book, where is it available? All of that kind of stuff. Please plug it. I wanted this to be like a 45-minute commercial, so I'm glad that it is, because I believe in it, and I'm glad that I have a platform where I can promote the things that I think will do good in society. Where can people find it? Reach out to you, all that kind of stuff.
Well, the book, if you're interested in the book, the website is braintoolsforteens.com, and there you can see a little bit more about it. And I also have an Instagram, Brain Tools for Teens, where I share science and tips and practical tips. Really, my joy of learning in the brain that I can share with people. So there they can find more too. And the book will be released on Amazon the 13th, Tuesday, the 13th of October. And then you can find it, a printed version of the ebook.
Beautiful. All right. Malin, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love the book, obviously, and I hope that people go out there and read it, and they give it to their kids, and the kids read it, and students read it, and they share, the positive impact that it's had on them, and we can grow this thing. We can snowball this thing. It's really great.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right. See ya.
Bye.